You're listening to Saturdays with Ted. The next 30 minutes of music is sponsored by Slate Music. SlateMusic.com.
African Hearts, and from the lips of Bruce Cassidy, who is my guest in the studio. A little bit of background on Mr. Cassidy, born in Fredericton, New Brunswick, studied trumpet and composition at the Berklee College of Music in Boston. He was musical director for Blood, Sweat, and Tears, and in 1980 accepted a film writing post in South Africa, where he worked for 23 years until he came back, becoming David Clayton Thomas, musical director. He now teaches improvisation trumpet at Humber College and is known as one of the world's leading performers of the electronic valve instrument, which is what you just heard. And you can hear him on March the 9th at a tribute to Duke Ellington and George Gershwin. It's part of the West End Jazz Series at Le Dome. Joining him will be Jessica Lalonde and Ori Dagan, and they will join us after this segment. Pleasure to meet you, sir.
Pleasure to meet you, Ted.
How did this film writing post in South Africa come along?
Well, a band that opened for us when we were in Blood, Sweat, and Tears in South Africa tracked me down after I left Blood, Sweat, and Tears. I was living in L.A., and he said, there's a film writing gig going, and it was offered to me. This friend of mine said, but I don't feel up to it. You want to do it? And I said, well, yeah, it's a gig, so musicians do that. So I went to South Africa for a year's contract, and it ended up being 23 years.
Well, that's what I was going to say. You went to do one film and ended up staying for two decades.
It was to be the music director for a studio. At that time, they had studios that would produce commercials and documentaries and features, and they needed like a sort of staff person who would write the music, take care of the music. They had other people take care of the film and so on. Mm-hmm. So it was that kind of gig.
Well, it must have been fascinating.
What was really fascinating was the culture, of course, like being, coming from Canada to the middle of South Africa. And those were during apartheid days. That was pretty far out.
Yeah. Let's go back a little bit to Blood, Sweat, and Tears. The first horn band. Yeah. I had the late Skip, the late Skip Prokop in here, along with a couple other guys.
So I worked with Skip in Lighthouse.
Yeah, did you?
Yeah, for a couple of years.
Well, we were talking about, I said, who was it? What was the order? Blood, Sweat, and Tears, Chicago, or Lighthouse?
So Blood, Sweat, and Tears came first. And Lighthouse was
second.
Was supposed to be Canada's answer to BS&T.
Right. And then Chicago was third of the horn bands.
The only difference is Chicago is still going.
Yeah.
Other band, and Lighthouse is still going. BS&T is going, but it's a bit of a nostalgia act now.
Right.
Well, most of the bands those days are,
That must have been an enjoyable time.
Oh, it was fantastic. I mean, the musicianship, was like amazing, and I got to write for the band, and we traveled first class, and it was really cool.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And how do you enjoy your current gig teaching at Humber College?
Well, I dig it. I mean, studying at York. I do. And
what are you studying?
Composition. So doing a master's, then I'm going to go on for a doctorate. I'm sort of. I dig that part of it. Sort of got a scientific kind of mind, so I'm going to do that. The gigging scene is it's not so much fun. I mean, when I was gigging here in the 70s. Then all the gigs are union gigs. You play at George's Spaghetti House for a week. Now it's one night, $100 the going rate, and it's not the fun it used to be. And so I write. I have clients overseas in Australia and South Africa and Germany. So I write, projects for them.
During your career, did you ever play with Boss Brass?
What's that?
Would you ever play with the Boss Brass?
Yes, I did. Yes, I played with them for 1971 to 78 when I left to join BS&T.
Well, then I would have seen you play because that's when I was in high school and we used to go see them.
Then we first did gigs at the Savern and Basin Street, and we traveled not so much. The band traveled more after in the 80s, I think, than we did in those days.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that was a fantastic gig.
Now tell me a little bit about this electronic valve instrument because it is a trumpet or it isn't a trumpet?
It isn't a trumpet. It's sort of a wind synthesizer. You blow in it and...
But has it got valves, keys?
It has keys, yes, but they're electronic keys. They're like elevator switches. You just touch them and they respond. No more problems with valve oil or sticking valves. You know what I mean.
I know exactly what you mean.
So it measures your air pressure, so it's quite responsive. So it has... if you play louder, it gets more strident. You play softly, it can be quite sweet. And it has vibrato, and because of that, it sounds quite human. It's quite natural, not like an electronic instrument. Mm-hmm. So it's called a wind controller. And there's a saxophone version of it and a trumpet version of it.
Now, do you teach that instrument as well at Humber?
No, not many people play it. So I don't teach that. I teach trumpet, regular trumpet.
Right.
And I supervise kids for their final recording projects. That's because I've done a lot of that stuff.
And what are these kids? They're all studying, and that's all part of the jazz program, right?
Yeah.
What do they hope to do? Do they hope to be jazz musicians, form their own jazz band? What do they envision for their future?
No, hopefully not. No. It's amazing actually that we see those of us that do that supervise the final recording projects are amazed at the different kinds of things that come out of the kids. There's bluegrass, there's funk, there's rap music, there's every conceivable kind of commercial music, and many have gone and released the albums that they've recorded as part of their final year. Mm-hmm. And actually, it's quite an innovative thing on Humber's part. They're one of the first schools to do this kind of thing. You're required to produce an album when you graduate.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the tribute to Duke Ellington and George Gershwin coming up at it's part of the West End Jazz Series, March 9th. It's a week today at Le Dome in Oakville at 1173 North Service Road East.
Yeah, that's it. But the two composers are Duke Ellington and George Gershwin, mm-hmm. And that's the idea is Oliver Vadas, who is the promoter of that series. Right. He's a crazy guy who thought he could do a jazz series, and he's making it work. So he asked me to put something together, and I thought I wanted to use Ori. So I've heard Ori, and I dug him. And then and I wanted Ori to do Nat King Cole. Turns out Ori had already done that. So Oliver suggested these two composers. So we put again, those are things that everybody loves, and we love them too. So we just picked the tunes that are comfortable for us, and we're gonna play them for the folks.
So you'll solo on trumpet on some of these tunes.
Yeah, and
between Jessica and Ori, they'll take care of the singing.
Oh yeah, and Pat LaBarbera is playing, and Pat Collins is playing bass, and Nancy Walker's playing piano, and Ted Warren's playing drums. So we're like a really high test, of great musicians, in the background.
This series has really taken off, huh?
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing. I tell Oliver he's crazy to do it, but he's got the good kind of crazy, I guess. He makes it work. And we need folks that do that, I got a lot of time for him.
I saw pictures from the last one that they did, and it was packed.
Yeah.
And that's got to be a good 400 or 500 people, right?
He's got it together, he's got a way, and everybody loves doing it, It's very cool scene. I really dig it.
Nice
and it gets nicer and nicer venues. It has it catered, and everybody has a great time.
Good stuff. A real pleasure meeting you. Enjoy your show next Saturday, and I'm going to let you, you can hang around if you want.
Yeah, why?
Hang around. We'll bring Jessica and Ori in here in a minute.
Do it, do it, do it, and then do it again. Being a musician is absurd. Memorizing melodies and notes and words. Everybody tells you that you're crazy, but you're not willing to admit it. You want to find the jack button, you want to hit it. Some people make millions, others sip. Others plant a seed for years, then let her rip. Sting of the cactus, you really must practice. Do it, and then do it again. Do it again, gentlemen. Dream is hard as hell. Heaven knows you want your dream to sell. Sting of the cactus, you always must practice. Do it, and then do it again.
Welcome back to the program from the award-winning singer, songwriter, and recording artist Ori Dagan. That is Sting of the Cactus from the CD Nathaniel, a tribute to Nat King Cole. And you darn wrote that song there, that tune, didn't you?
I sure did, with Nathan Hiltz.
That's a great song. Who are we listening to on the strings there, on the bass? And
on the bass is Ross McIntyre, and on the piano, the great Mark Kieswetter.
All right. Sounds great. Ori will be participating in aforementioned West End Jazz Series 1 week from this day with a tribute to Duke Ellington and George Gershwin at La Dome in Oakville. You can go to westendjazzseries.something.
CA.
Thank you very much. And find out more information. You've performed at Austin's South by, what is it?
South by Southwest.
South by Southwest, which is a huge festival.
Oh my gosh, that was incredible. Yeah, it's incredibly huge, and we were one of the only jazz artists. They had maybe 20 jazz artists, well over 1,000 artists in total. It's just massive.
Wow.
Craziness.
And that inspired what our version is with North by Northeast, right?
Right.
Which is much smaller.
Sure.
And I hear Austin's a fabulous city, too, by the way.
It's a real music city. Beautiful.
And you performed in Seoul, Korea?
Seoul, Korea. That was really something. Yeah, I wrote this tune on this Nathaniel album that was inspired by Nat's song, The Frim Fram Sauce. I'd wanted to write a novelty song, and the food bibimbap always kind of inspired me. I thought there's a song in that word. So I wrote this tune called Bibimbap, and the album we made was actually a visual album. So we made 12 music videos for this. And the Bibimbap music video just started to become a hit in South Korea. And they invited me to perform at the first ever Public Diplomacy Week in Korea. Yeah.
Gangman style.
I was there. That's right.
I was there, right.
Oh, yeah. Also performing on next Saturday at the West End Jazz Series is a vocalist who sings jazz and opera, Jessica Lalonde.
Hello.
Nice to meet you. Welcome to the program.
Thank you.
Jazz and opera. Do you got preference?
I love both.
Yeah.
But I mean, jazz is where my heart lies. Yeah.
Now, we're going to be playing something that you recorded with the Tiki Collective. Tell me about the Tiki Collective.
Oh, it's a wild hodgepodge band of geniuses, crazy people. It's James B's pet, is his group.
He's crazy.
Yeah.
in a nice
I
way.
say that with all the love, yeah.
Same with me.
And actually all the people in it are just, I mean, you have great Bob Scott on drums and Eric St. Laurent usually on guitar and George Kohler on bass, Attila Fiash. So it's just Yeah. And then circulating like a giant pool of vocalists that are some of the best in the city, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so all of the shows are a little bit different because it depends who's there, and yeah, and it's all got a tiki vibe.
So there's a good chance that people who like to take in the various jazz festivals around the area, like Beaches and Kensington Market and Waterloo, would have seen you perform. But you're also in residency at 120 Diner.
Mm-hmm, yeah. That started in January. Yeah.
How often?
The last Friday of every month. # last Friday.
Now, with next Saturday at the West End Jazz Series, what will you be doing? What songs will you be performing?
Well, we've got Ellington and Gershwin.
Yeah.
Mostly, yeah. So I'm Ori's guest, so I'll be doing a couple things, and then.
We had a hard time picking because there's so many great tunes by these composers.
Huge catalog.
Yeah, we have our favorites, and then we always like to kind of think outside the box, maybe learn a new tune or something. And it's always fun to sing together, isn't it?
Yeah.
Kind of like a Donnie and Marie thing happening. So what do you know what songs you'll be performing?
Yeah, we've got a pretty good idea of what they'll be. You'll definitely hear I Got Rhythm. So you can't do a Gershwin tribute without that one.
Right. Okay, good point.
My favorite by Duke is It Don't Mean a Thing If It Ain't Got That Swing.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, but there's some beautiful ballads, too, in that book. Sophisticated Lady.
Yeah.
What else do you like?
I love In a Sentimental Mood.
Oh, yeah.
And then for Gershwin, Someone to Watch Over Me is my favorite of all time. It's never gets old.
Yeah.
Now, you've done one of these West End things, Ori. You did Unforgettable Nat King Cole.
That's right. It's really a beautiful series, West End Jazz.
Mm-hmm.
The organizer, Oliver Vadash, does an amazing job of bringing these people in, dinner and show, and it's a really great audience, really attentive.
Mm-hmm. Now, will you be performing anywhere in the city? You don't have a residency.
No, I'm everywhere. I'm celebrating Nat King Cole's centenary with a couple of gigs. The first one is March 16th at the Senator Wine Bar, and that's just with Nathan Hilton. I think we're going to do it acoustically because it's a tiny room, and most of the stuff there is acoustic. It's like 24 seats, so reservations are recommended. And just announced, just in the works right now, on April 20th, I'll be at Hughes Room.
Great. Tell me about performing in front of 24 seats. I mean, people talk about being nervous performing in front of 1,500 people.
Right.
But I would imagine working in front of 24 people is a lot more daunting than 1,500 people, because it's like, you swear to God, they're all staring at you.
Yeah.
And they're all so close.
Personally, I love it. Like my favorite part about this business is performing. I love being on stage, and I actually really love the intimacy of a small room because you get to look right at people. It's really cool. You see how it makes them feel. It's a cool experience.
Mm-hmm. How big is the 120 Diner?
Also small. I don't know the actual.
Maybe about 60, 70 seats.
Yeah, but it's intimate, and you can really look into people's faces.
You like that intimacy too?
I used to not. I used to like the big, like for the opera stuff, the classical stuff. I liked having a huge crowd to sort of draw on and sing over top of. But now I've become addicted to the crew, and talking to people directly and asking them questions and then singing to them is kind of now I like that.
Taking their requests.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Having a laugh.
All right. So we're going to play something from Jessica. And you got something hooked up there? Okay, good. From Jessica, you'll be able to hear Jessica and Ori and Bruce Cassidy as well as they gather together a week today for the West End Jazz Series, tribute to Duke Ellington and George Gershwin at La Dome, 1173 North Service Road East. Go to westendjazz.ca. This is from the Tiki Collective featuring Jessica Lalonde. Thank you all for coming in, and enjoy your show next week.
What a pleasure. Thank you.
There we go.
Thank you.
In all the old familiar places that this heart of mine chestnut